Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the GSMC Fantasy Sports Podcast. And we transition from a happy period to a sad period for the running back position. Because, yes, while the running back myself really did not perform to snuff. And it's kind of telling when we think about it as well. Because, a lot about fantasy is that you are predicting what can happen. You're always thinking ahead. But in the present, when it finally is played on the field in real life, things just don't happen for you. And so these guys really, even though they had high hopes, for whatever reasons, just did not perform. So let's look into them. Starting off in New York. A guy who kind of fell under the radar in this Giants offense because he wasn't necessarily, the guy who was supposed to have all the pressure on his shoulders, but might now receive a lot more pressure than necessary in Devin Singletary. Now, I know what you're thinking. A lot of the blame for the ineptitude of the New York Giants has to fall on the players who are already there. Daniel Jones, yes. The O-line, yes. The ineptitudes of the wide receiver room, yes. The ineptitudes of the organization as a whole, yes. When you bring in a guy like Devin Singletary at the running back position to try and play a complementary style of football to help Daniel Jones, it now creates an even more tense situation when the whole team does not deliver and the new signing who just came into this dumpster fire, kind of under the radar, did not live up to par. Now he has to face it. I don't think it's fair to indict a guy like Devin Singletary because he kind of profiles one of the better players in this Giants offense. He only had 10 carries, 37 yards, 9.2 fantasy points. But is it really his fault? Again, like with Daniel Jones, maybe more blame should fall on Daniel Jones as the quarterback. He has to own up to his own mistakes and the deficiencies of this offense. But at the end of the day, anyone on the Giants has to live with this. Anyone on the Giants, whether they've been there for quite some time or have just been drafted like Malik Neighbors or just been signed and acquired like Devin Singletary, have to live with the fact that the pressure of the New York Giants just is immediately upon you once you arrive. And so we're going to have to see how Devin Singletary develops. But at the end of the day, I'm not as concerned about him as I am with some other guys on this list. And one guy that I'm kind of concerned about, because this is a guy who's bounced around a lot, had a lot of success last year as a Philadelphia Eagle, kind of is one of those guys who has the potential in him to be one of the better running backs in the league, but really didn't play up to snuff is DeAndre Swift. 10 carries, 30 yards, 5 fantasy points for a guy who can put up big numbers as a running back. And it might just be down to schematic fit, because the Chicago Bears are trying to implement a lot of different pieces in this offense. It does look shaky, and translated to Caleb Williams being in my fantasy QB losers list as well. But DeAndre Swift, I expect more out of. And here's why. Because for someone who's been in so many different running back rooms around the league, learning from different kind of philosophies, understanding different parts of the running back role, I would expect him to be even more of a leader for Caleb Williams in this offense. Yes, they want to get vertical down the field in the pass game. Yes, they have one of the better receiving cores in the league. But DeAndre Swift, they didn't sign him for nothing. They signed him because they knew he was an experienced running back who's had different experiences in different places, most importantly. He wasn't just a one-team pony. He was someone who they believed could impart some wisdom to this team. But he was not up to snuff in this offense. And I think that overall, he now becomes a huge question mark in this offense as well. Because how much do you trust him? If your goal is to get Caleb Williams to a point where he's comfortable throwing the football, comfortable out of structure as well, then DeAndre Swift, yes, he can set the tone, but he can also be much bigger than that. And there's a limited sense of thinking now when it comes to DeAndre Swift. He was personally on my fantasy team. I expected him to have at least a decent day. But I didn't expect him to falter like this. And so that's a very big concern for the investment that the Bears made in him as a running back who they believed could be a leader for Caleb Williams in the backfield. And then a guy who I was very high on had a huge opportunity as a lead back for a team that everyone knows is going to run the ball. It's Zamir White. Now, yes, the Raiders aren't necessarily a team that can sustain this philosophy for so long, but Zamir White is now the face of this offense. You know, it's crazy to say because Devontae Adams is still there, and as long as he's there, he brings a high-profile name and brand to the Las Vegas Raiders. But Zamir White fits Antonio Pierce's philosophies for this offense better than anyone now. Antonio Pierce actually said he wanted Josh Jacobs to be the face of this offense. Now he's gone. So now Zamir White has to step into that role. Only 13 carries, 44 yards, 4.6 fantasy points. Very talented. And some of the decision-making that Antonio Pierce made in terms of situational downs did not seem to rely upon the fact that he trusted his own philosophies. And so it's highly concerning if you're a back like White who wants to break out, who knows that he can get a lot of opportunities, a lot of touches, a lot of targets in this offense. But there's some level of distrust there where Antonio Pierce maybe feels like he was left with you to where it's not translating to solid production for you. So Zamir White is someone that might just be a swing and a miss. But I'm still holding out hope for him because, like I said, it is week 1, and the Raiders are going to be a run-first team. Perhaps the most disappointing of all, a guy who a lot of people take very high in fantasy drafts, even knowing the risk of doing it. A guy who a lot of people were saying was going to get a lot of touches in the system. Raheem Morris constantly said we are going to get this guy more touches in this offense. He did get the touches, but not the efficiency. Bijan Robinson. 18 carries, 5 catches off 5 targets. That's 23 combined quote-unquote touches for Bijan Robinson. So that's a solid number for an NFL starting quarterback. But only 68 yards, no touchdowns, and the 5 catches for 43 yards. Yes, that could be down to the pressure this offense was facing because of the Pittsburgh defense. Yes, it could be because Kirk Cousins really was not equipped to play this game because he looked very stiff in this game. That being said, if you're Bijan Robinson, and Raheem Morris is saying, hey, I want to make sure you get your touches in this offense, then you have to produce. Because they did everything to get him the ball in this game. But he just didn't live up to it. He's going to face easier defenses in the future, yes. But kind of setting the tone for this offense was going to be important for him. And he just didn't live up to that. It's disappointing because a lot of people think very highly of him, especially in fantasy terms. But right now, he's not, whether it be because this offense is learning too much too quickly, or maybe they just ran into a Pittsburgh buzzsaw. I don't know. He's going to have to be the X factor for this offense. But overall, you can't place too much weight. Because like I said, fantasy football is a very predictive thing. It's a very future-heavy thing. And all we have right now is what happened. With that being said, take these winners and losers with a grain of salt. There are some winners that will probably be fantastic fantasy players for the rest of the season. But there are some who might falter. And there are some losers who still have potential. So make of this what you will. But at the end of the day, I'm just seeing what I saw this weekend. I'm basing that kind of predictive manner of winners and losers off of what I saw. So take this with a grain of salt. Coming next, we transition in our last segment from the NFL to college football. A wacky, bizarre week 2. Right after this short break.